Let's go back. Let's go way back. 28 years to 1993. Yes, that is right. I have gone full 1990s. And what a time it was. A time of Blur, a time of Britpop, a time of Amiga 500, playing games like Turrican and Secret of Monkey Island, and a time of my first job, building and maintaining PC computer systems, where a guy came into our workshop and asked for something called Linux to be installed. We'd never heard of it, but I gave it a go anyway. After all, it only came on 3.5 inch floppy disks, so it couldn't have been too bad. Setting up X Windows is a bit of a pain, but hey, that was my first experience of Linux, and it was also my first experience of Debian. So, how's Debian doing today? Let's find out after the break. Alright, so here we are. This is Debian 11 Bullseye, the current release for Debian. And this is the desktop that you get deposited in when you first start up. What I would point out is there is an image here. If we just click on Pictures in the Files Manager, let's just take a look at this. This is a screenshot from the installer. So you can choose your desktop environment when you install, which is actually quite neat. So you have the Debian desktop environment ticked, and then you have GNOME ticked by default and standard system utilities. However, you can choose XFCE, GNOME Flashback, KDE Plasma, Cinnamon, Mate, LXDE, LXQT, or you can create it as a web server or SSH server. And if you like the choice and want to try them all, you can actually tick them all, and it'll install all the desktop environments, and you can choose which one you're going to use on login. So that's actually quite nice, to be honest. I quite like that. So this is what you get when you install. So it has the standard notifications bar at the top, where you can set your sound, your microphone, your brightness, choose your Wi-Fi, see your battery status, etc., and click on settings. So if we just click on settings, and we just wait for that to load. So this is takes us into About, and as you can see here, we are running Debian GNU, Linux 11, Bullseye, 64-bit, 3.385 is the GNOME version. So it really is. It's interesting that you have the choice of a GNOME sort of classic environment when this is now kind of classed as classic in its own right, given that GNOME 40's been out for quite some time. So I am also running the X11 windowing system. Before, when you install it, you get Wayland installed as default, which is fine. I was quite pleased about that. However, I couldn't get I couldn't get OBS to work, and I couldn't get the screen recorder to work for this video. So in the end, I tried all sorts of things to get it working. I tried downloading the flat pack of OBS, which is the later version of OBS, version 27. Which is meant to support Wayland. However, it just would not work on this Debian Bullseye release. So in the end, I had to give in and use X11 as my windowing system. Not too much of a hassle, however, a little bit disappointing. So as you can see my system specs there. I'm running 16 gig of RAM. I've got an Intel Core i7-4712 HQ CPU. I have the NVIDIA and Intel combo of graphics cards in here in this laptop, and I have a 512 gig SSD. So Yeah, the look and feel of this system is a little bit dated already, given that this is the latest release. However, it works perfectly well, and we get the standard GNOME settings here as well. There's kind of no extras or modifications. These are sort of the basic GNOME settings that you would expect. If we click on background, these are the default backgrounds that you get when you install Debian Bullseye. Some of them you can even get the older Debian background as well. So I think one of these actually says Debian 10 on it. There we go, Debian 10, a little bit confusing. I don't know why they've kept that one in there. However, we'll probably stick with the default one. They're quite nice in their own right, though. So yeah, fairly okay selection of backgrounds. It's nice that they've got their custom Debian backgrounds in there as well. Not much to say really on the settings. That it's kind of your default settings. What I would say is that it does out of the box support data in the cloud, so you can connect your cloud accounts: Google, Nextcloud, Facebook, Microsoft, Flickr, Foursquare, Microsoft Exchange, of course, IMAP and SMTP for your email, and enterprise login for Kerberos, whether that's Active Directory or an LDAP server. So nice selection there as well. You get a pretty decent sound control panel, so you can choose the applications that you want volume on. You can choose your input output as well, which is quite nice. Power, you get your power stats on your battery, etc. It's quite handy for your laptop. And displays, it does support fully my UHD display on this laptop. However, I've dropped it down to 2560 by 1440 just for comfort rate on my eyes so that I can see the screen. You will notice here, because it's running an older version of GNOME, that Debian doesn't support gesture support on the touchpad. You kind of get your basic two-finger scrolling, and that's kind of about it really on the touchpad. Not too much of a problem for me on this Dell XPS, given that the trackpad on this is pretty poor, and I'm using an external mouse, so it's not too much of a problem. Everything else on here is fairly self-explanatory, as you would expect from GNOME. So let's just have a look at the top bar here. So you've got your notifications up here, you've got your GNOME calendar. It all looks fairly nice. Then you've got your activities, which brings up this kind of workflow that you can see here, which is quite nice. It's all very classic GNOME, as you would expect. The applications you get is, if we click on Firefox, so this is the version of Firefox you get bundled with Debian 11 Bullseye. It's Firefox 91.8, so really a very old version of Firefox browser. However, this is the extended support release, and what this means is that Firefox create these extended support release versions of their browsers for mainly the corporate arena. When you are rolling out hundreds of laptops running Firefox, you don't want to be installing updates, Firefox browser updates on them every 5 minutes. So they created this extended support release, which means that only the security patches get rolled out. However, you don't get the extra features of the new versions of the browser. So you wouldn't get the extra features of version 99, which is the current Firefox browser as of at the moment. And you'll find that with a lot of the applications bundled on here, they are pretty old, and the software repository itself the versions of applications you'll find in there are a good couple of generations back in terms of age, and there is a reason for this. The Debian community, who are pictured here on this website, they believe that going for older tested applications is better than providing bleeding edge latest applications. So they do have a point there. I would slightly disagree a little bit in terms of certainly with regard to things like Firefox, LibreOffice, OBS. Those are on much newer versions of the basic application versions, and they've been patched by a good 2 or 3 extra patches as well. So they are considered to be stable in the Linux community. So it's interesting that to kind of you've got this kind of let's stick with the older applications because they work, but you are losing out on some of the functionality that the newer applications bring. Downloading the operating system, you go over here and you click on the nice download button here, which has got the nice Debian logo, and it will immediately try to download the ISO for the net installer. That is the recommended ISO. What that will do is it will download the ISO for you to burn to your USB stick or DVD, and it will then need a network connection to download the rest of it so that it sets up properly. However, you can get, as it says here, CD, DVD, Blu-ray disc media or USB stick images, and you can also download the unofficial installers, which is good to know, because I had a lot of problems actually installing Broadcom wireless on this distribution, and it's well known about, and this is because essentially the Broadcom wireless is being determined as something that's not free or non-free, or has non-free code inside. So you have to kind of go through this all of this basically to get the Broadcom wireless to work, which of course means that you need to either have an Ethernet dongle or be able to tether up your mobile phone via USB to provide kind of a mobile hotspot USB Ethernet connection. So that's, again, it doesn't make it easy for new users, and certainly I would say possibly that Debian on its own like this is perhaps not the best for new users to Linux. You have to do a certain amount of fiddling around to get things working as you want them to. For example, it doesn't come enabled with Snap or Flatpak by default, so you need to enable Flatpak on Debian Bullseye, and that's fine. You just go to flatpak.org, and there's a nice Debian quick setup that they lead you through, and you need to restart afterwards, and then you are able to go to flathub.org, and after a restart you'll be able to install tons more latest applications on your Debian Bullseye release, and that really is as quick as clicking on the application and then clicking install. As we can see there, open with software install, and that will basically go off, open the software application installer within the Software Discovery Center. Takes a little while because it queries the flathub.org, has to go to the flathub.org repository. Once that comes back, we should be okay to install. So I'm installing Spotify here, and we're just doing a bit of a live test to see how quickly that works. It's not the quickest, it has to be said, given that I'm running on a very decent internet connection. I've got a strong Wi-Fi connection. The access point is literally just under my desk here. Yeah, it's pretty slow, to be honest. And again, you know, that might be something that needs tweaking in the background. So I'll just let that run in the background there. So there we go. So it's finally come up. Click on install and it'll go off and install it. There we go. Once it gets there, it doesn't take too long to install the Flatpak application. So it does work fairly seamlessly, but there is these sort of little delays as it has to go off to FlatHub to sort itself out. It does work, however. LibreOffice is on this distribution by default, and again, as I've mentioned earlier, it is a very old version of LibreOffice, 7.0.4.2. So again, if you wanted a newer version, you simply have to enable Flatpak and in the way I've just shown you, and then restart your Debian Bullseye system, and then you'll be able to install the later releases of the applications that you need and get those extra features if you need them. However, you are kind of stuck with the older kernel on this release. So if we go back to settings and if we go back to about, you are stuck with 3.38.5 as your GNOME version, and yeah, so that's a little bit of a shame, really. The kernel the Linux kernel that it runs on is also 5.10, which is an improvement from the previous release, which was on 4 something, I think. But again, you know, we're on 5.17 now as a Linux kernel, so to be on 5.10, it'll support some newer hardware, but you will miss out on some of the improvements that 5.17 Linux kernel, things like battery improvements, hardware improvements, hardware integration improvements. You will miss out on those using an older release kernel. What I will say though is the overall experience, particularly once I changed the windowing system to X11, and once I've sort of fiddled around to get things working in the way I wanted them to, has been fairly stable. Overall, I would say, yeah, it's been great to check out Debian. You know, it really is the granddaddy of all Linux releases. But I would say at the moment it works. It's fairly stable. It's a shame you have to fiddle so much to kind of get things working. Most users would want them to work. And it's a shame that the GNOME version is such an old version. However, if you like this GNOME version, then you know that this could be your thing, and it might be that actually you prefer this way of working, and so Debian 11 Bullseye might be what you're after right now. It certainly looks fairly nice. It feels kind of modern. I feel like I've gone back in time a little, but it functions fine. And as to its stability, I've been running it now for a good few weeks, and it hasn't really been too much issues other than the ones that I've mentioned already. So if you want to have a or check out the granddaddy of all Linux distributions, then I would say give it a try. it is very stable. If you are willing to either, if you want a system that's going to run the older applications and have an older kernel, and you've tested it as well, that it runs on your hardware and it works okay, then this may well be the distribution for you. However, for me, I've had some issues here, particularly the Wayland issue, the having to switch to X11 to get OBS to work, and the other issues where the applications were older versions, so having to get Flatpak working on here. They weren't major issues at all, but I would say again, if you're a new user, these sort of things could be a bit of a putter-offer in terms of trying out this release. So that's my review on Debian, the granddaddy of Linux distributions. If you've enjoyed this review and would like to see more, then please click on like and subscribe. I look forward to seeing you next time.